All right. Hello, everyone. Colton Skirvin here, National Sales Director for ASB. I'm joined by Greg Gelineau, who is our Executive Vice President of Field Development. Greg's been in this industry for 40 years now, serving at a top level in leadership. He was the #1 regional director for several years in a row, executive council member for over a decade, and has been with ASB for a long time, improving regions, helping people, performing at a high level. So Greg, we are blessed to have you on the call today. I appreciate you making some time. I know this wasn't on your schedule at the beginning of the week, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
Always. Anything I can do to help the team and help everybody out there. I really enjoy it. So
You bet. Well, today our topic is retaining good people. And Greg, I thought you'd be a tremendous asset to this phone call for a few different reasons. One is your experience and leadership over the course of a long career. You've had a lot of success. And more importantly, just the way you're able to communicate with people. You and I have had several conversations around, what do you do when a manager is struggling? What do you do when an agent is struggling? And you just have a way to identify those things really before they come to fruition, right? You have a good sense of what's going on, both in their professional lives, their personal lives. And you've always done a good job interjecting in situations right before they blow up and say, hey, you're a valuable asset on this team. We want to make sure you can stay here. I notice you're struggling lately, but I have a lot of belief in you, I have a lot of faith in you. And then making sure you're lining them up with some top producers, which I think is an incredible skill to have leaders. So that's wonderful. With that being said, Greg, I really want to kick this off with a conversation you and I had back in August when I came to Rhode Island to visit you. We talked about the ability to co-create a plan, right, which creates accountability with new agents, right? The expectations that we can hold them to, the expectations that they can hold us to. So can you kind of walk me through that conversation, what you and I discussed and what that sounds like?
yeah, sure. So before I do that, I just wanted to congratulate you. I think today you qualified for Hawaii. Is that not true?
I did. Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
with 4 months to spare, so that's nice. I think you need to also be recognized for the hard work you put in, especially with everything else you're juggling. One thing I want to just start off with is I think it's important that we remember that leadership, isn't just about who has the title. It's about who has the people, right? That's what leadership is. So there are title-only leaders out there, and then there's talented leaders, I like to say. People follow the talented leaders because they want to, not because they have to. And as a leader, we have a responsibility to ensure that we hold our agents accountable to the activity levels necessary for them to be able to attain their goals. That's really one of our major responsibilities. And I think a lot of people shy away from that. A hands-off leadership approach really is a recipe for failure and high turnover. So I think that's really important to understand. There's a big difference between micromanaging and then coaching people. Leadership's a team sport. So, you're the captain of the team. If you're on this call, whether you have one agent or 101, doesn't matter. Passive leadership is one of the biggest problems in most companies. And when you look at leadership, I look at it, leadership's a noun. It's not it's an action. I should say it's a verb. It's an action verb. It's not a noun, right? So leadership is something we do. It's not just something you are. And so one thing that's important, I think, and what I really want to encourage people to do is something I call coach leading. Coach leading is today's version of servant leadership. And we've all probably heard the term servant leadership, but what is a coach leader? A coach leader follows a model where when we bring somebody new on, and say I'm bringing you in, Colton, and you're a new agent starting in my agency or in my downline for people on this phone call, the first thing I want to do as soon as we get together in that first couple of days that you're in doing your contracting, whatever, is I want to sit down and talk to you about setting your goals. So I want to have this conversation. What does that mean? It means I want to talk about your goals for the next 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. I want to draw them out with you. Most people, because of the last number of years, I'd say 5 or 6 years, especially with everything that went on with COVID, a lot of people lost a vision. They lost the ability to really think further than just today. And so we need to help them out of that. We need to get them thinking again, putting to paper the things that they want to accomplish. I sit down at the end of each year and do my goals, personal, professional, financial, spiritual, for the whole new year. And just recently, in fact, I was looking at them and they're all checked off, except I think I have one left that I got to accomplish. But I'll tell you, keeping that and putting it to paper is crucial. So for a new agent, we need to set their goals because they don't know what to expect in this new career. So right off the bat, two things we need to get, two numbers right off the bat, besides the goals I just discussed. One is, what do you have to make so that you can stay here? Okay, so there's two numbers. What do you have to make? What do you have to earn to be able to remain here? Number two is, what would you like to earn this year? Okay, so we want to have both these numbers. And then we need to manage their activity to what they want to earn, right? But we certainly have to make sure that they're making what they need to earn, right? That's the big part. And, we can talk about and put to paper all the other goals, whether it's convention, desired income, advancement goals, personal, goals for down the line. That's fine. But if we can't help our people know, hey, I got to make $700 a week, $2,800 a month, or $3,000 a month, I have to average that or I can't stay here. Now I have something to work with. And then it's up to us to make sure every single week we're looking at all of our downline agents' payroll to see if they're there. I send RSMs their entire office's payroll because sometimes I wonder if they do even look at it at times to make sure they're looking at this every single week. They should be checking this out and looking at who needs a coffee, who needs a pat on the back and a congratulations, who needs a family meeting, right? Who needs for me to interject and maybe give them some additional supervision, right? I need to manage to those numbers, but if I don't have those numbers, it's gonna be very difficult. And then, so here's the key. Once we've done your goals, we've sat down, we've determined what we want to accomplish, we have your I have to, and then I want to numbers, Colton. The last thing I'm gonna say, which is the most important, is I wanna ask you, Colton, is it okay now if I hold you accountable to the plan that we co-created for you to succeed here at American Senior Benefits? Is it okay if I hold you accountable to the activity necessary so that we can see all this come to fruition? And you need to get an agreement from them.
Yeah.
Okay? So you say, yes, great. And then I need to copy those goals. I need to keep them, whether you have a file for each of your downline agents or you have it on a digital, whatever. I need to have those. So the first day call day that you're leaving at 2 o'clock with 2 appointments for the next field day and some excuse, we can pull that out and say, hey, Colton, do you remember what we sat down and created? Do you remember you had asked me, right? We committed to each other that I would hold you accountable to the activity necessary so that we don't see this just fall by the wayside. Leaving at 2 o'clock with 2 appointments for tomorrow is not going to help you get here. But we can't have that, right? Conversation comfortably if we haven't had a commitment up front. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the big difference between a leader and a manager. The manager says, hey, you don't have 6 appointments, why are you leaving, right? Versus a leader understands, hey, this is what you told me you wanted to accomplish, and you and I agreed that it would be okay for me to hold you accountable to your goals, not mine, not the company's, not
Right.
Integrity's, not ASB's, but yours and your family's, to make sure that you're earning not just what you need to make, but what you want to make. You remember that conversation? And I think it's received in such a different way because now they look at you and they say, hey, Greg's trying to help me meet my goals. That's the conversation they're taking home. That's the thought process they're taking home versus the initial conversation of the manager is they go home and they think, man, my manager's an ass. He's just trying to micromanage me. I had 5 appointments the other day and it worked out fine. So I don't know what his problem is or her problem is.
Right.
So when you have something to tie it to, like this is the why behind this number of appointments, like this is the math behind it. And you and I agreed that I would hold you accountable to make sure you're successful.
Right. Yeah. We only have a problem when we care more about our agents' goals than they do.
Yeah.
And we have to have that conversation.
So what would you do if, let's say, you have an agent that is meeting the expectations? They're there for the meetings. They're there for the board call. They're making the dials. They're setting the appointments. but their income is not reflecting that, right? Maybe it's some chargebacks, maybe it's they're not good in the field, they don't have the right trainer. What does that conversation sound like when you pull them into the office?
Yeah. So part of leadership is mentoring people, and this is an ongoing relationship of you making sure I like to put it back on the manager a lot, that your house is in order, and then you're offering guidance and counsel to your people. You know, it's crucial, and I really believe this as leaders, that we are good decision makers. We have to be role models, right? You can't teach from a book you've never read. Like it or not, your people are watching more how you live out your life than just the words you speak. They're watching, right? Because it's the old saying, I can't hear the words you're saying because your actions are speaking so loud to me, right? That's really true. And then you have to, I like to say, would your agents say to you that your words match your deeds? Because leadership can't be as do as I say, but not as I do, right? Proposition. So it's extremely important, first off. So if you want to be, if you don't want to be held to a higher standard, don't be a leader, I always say. Because just be an agent, that's fine. Agent's a great career. But your agent should be inspired by how you live out your life, not embarrassed by it. And I think that's really important. And that's a responsibility. That means sometimes we can't have all the fun that we might want to have, right?
Right.
It's, in front of our people, we have to show what leadership is. And it's definitely a big responsibility to be in leadership. So, kind of going back to your original question, what would I say to you if you want to rephrase it to me? What would you rephrase the question to me, Colton? What you really want to hear?
So let's say, for example, I'm meeting all the expectations.
Yep.
I'm coming in every day. I'm doing the meetings. I'm making the dials. I have the number of appointments, but I'm not reaching that need income. So you decide as a leader, hey, this is someone I believe in. They're not meeting their need income. That's probably a problem. You would probably pull me in your office or go have a cup of coffee. So what does that conversation sound like with someone that you believe in and you want to stick around?
Yeah, and you just said a key word. I still believe in them, right? I believe they can do it. So the difference between believing in them as a person and believing they can do this business.
Right.
So I have to first determine that. And that's two different fences, right? Unfortunately, that's not always the case. And just because I believe in them doesn't mean that they can actually do this. But if I do believe in them and I do believe they can do this, then we really have to do a forensics, right? I like to say lift the sheets is my old theory. And what does lift the sheets mean, right? It means I need to really take a deep dive into their schedule. I once had an agent who literally, this goes back many years, but I knew he wasn't putting the calls in and wasn't putting the time in, yet every week his schedule was full. Every week he had a full set of appointments. And I was 24, 25 years old, I believe, at the time managing this person. And this person was probably 50 at the time. And so, it was almost a little intimidating conversation as the leader to have it with him. But I went and did the forensics. I literally, one day when I knew I was right, and because he would come in and just say, oh, this, that, I can't, the people don't like the products. It was always an excuse. And yet he spent a lot of time in the smoking area on call days, right? So I literally went in one day and I called every single one of his 15 appointments. Okay. In other words, what I did is, and this is the way I did it, is I would go, he'd have, let's say it's Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I would wait till about 11 and I would call the appointment up and say, hey, yes, it's Colton there. Colton, Greg Gelineau with, we'll just say American Senior Benefits, right? I'm just calling on the manager in the office and I just need to get a message to Dan. This person's name was Dan. He's passed away now, so I can talk about this. But the bottom line is, and the person would say, Dan who? And I go, Dan so-and-so? You had an appointment with him at 10 o'clock today from our firm? I go, we don't have any appointment with Dan. So I did this on if not all of them, I believe I did all of them. And then I had my end of week checkout with him. And it was one of the most uncomfortable conversations you'll ever have. And it was so exciting because I love uncomfortable conversations because I know they're going to lead to something good. They're not fun to have up front, but on the other side of every uncomfortable conversation as a leader is progress for both parties. You can take that one to the bank. So, and I'll talk about that in a little bit further on. But I laid it all in front of them. So tell me what happened here on Monday. Well, this one was they didn't have any money. This one, there was nothing to do. They had no goals. This one, this one, that, too expensive. And I went to every appointment. And then I just looked him in the eyes. And I said, Colton, right? His name was Dan, but I'll say, Colton, is that the story you want to go with? And he said, well, what do you mean? Yeah. I go, can I ask you one more time? Is that the story of this week's schedule you want to go with? And he broke down. And all of that, I can't even believe. And I found out later on every single, this is going back in time, and this will tell you right now, every one of those appointments had phone numbers, everything. They were all phone booths throughout the state of Rhode Island. Yeah, she took the time to write down the numbers of phone booths throughout the state, make up names, right? I'm thinking to myself, how much stress and anxiety was this person under? This business wasn't for this person, okay? And they were finding every possible, but they wanted to have the title. They wanted to be, at the time, a financial advisor. They loved it all. Came from a successful family. Father was a doctor, brother was a politician. And he just, but he was making no money. And that's when you have to determine, is it a can't do or a won't do? Because if it's a can't do, we have to have a goodbye conversation, maybe even help them give them a reference to get another position, whatever. But you have to determine as a leader, is this a can't do or a won't do? If it's a won't do, we can work with that, right? And how I'm going to step in is we're going to have a real, strong conversation. We're going to set up a runway. And maybe that runway is the next 90 days. We're going to see if this is for you. And so I'm going to work with you. I'm going to set you up with field days with some of the best talent in here. I'm going to make sure you get plenty of people to call so you have the inventory. And I'm going to hold you accountable to the amount of activity you're going to need. And then we're going to see if you can do this. And I'm personally going to get out with you as well. That's what I would be doing as the leader. Yeah. And then I give them but you have to have a time frame, right? Because you have to see if this is they're either going to move up or move out at the end of those 90 days.
Yeah. And I've seen that before where agents, they don't seem to sell insurance. However, they always have a full schedule. So like the point is, okay, well, let's lift the sheets here and figure out what's really going on. Are you just that bad at this business? Or are these appointments maybe not as real as you're making them out to be?
This goes back about 30 years. And I can just tell you, I was like, as soon as I got the first one and they said, I don't know who you're talking about, I knew I was on to, like, it's like pulling the string, right? And then I unraveled the entire blanket, right? And it was almost like a horror film as I was going by the 8th, the 10th, the 12th. I'm like, wow. And I thought part of me was hurting for this person because they thought about what kind of anxiety this person's dealing with, right, on a daily basis. But the other part of me said, there's no benefit of him being here because he's not working, right? He's just finding other ways to fake an entire career. And but you got to be willing to call it out and have those tough conversations.
Yeah. And I think, that brings me to a point that I hadn't thought about before, which is checking fact finders of your agents, right? Because it could be, maybe they do have the activity, but maybe they're going in these houses and they're just trying to write, only a med sup, for example, they're not cross-selling. So I think it's important, and it's super easy if you have just a few agents, once, if not twice a week, hey, you see their submitted numbers, you see their issued numbers, but hey, bring those fact finders in. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. Well, I see here this section's not even filled out. Does this person have money? Who's their life insurance with? I see you did the Medicare piece. Do they need a cancer plan? Hey, how about this? Let's call the client and let's say, hey, I'm glad I was able to help you with the med sub. We got it approved. However, last time I was there, we didn't have time to discuss this other area, right? So I want to come back out, have a conversation with you, let you know how your Medicare supplement works, make sure you have your cards. And then it gives you the opportunity to send that agent back into a qualified appointment where they can go make some money. All right. So It's not always the number of appointments. Sometimes it's what are they getting out of these appointments? Are they identifying all the opportunities that we as leaders can see plain as day? And are we tracking that?
100%.
We had a gal here 5 years and she's like, this business isn't for me. She worked in a different region. And I said, why not? She goes, well, I'm making 30, 40 grand a year after 5 years. I said, okay, well, I said, I got a plane to catch here, but before I leave, go ahead and grab all your fact finders. She goes, all of them? I said, all of them. She brings out this big stack of files and I just started flipping through them. And there was not a single fact finder where she filled out the financial piece or the life insurance piece. And I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. You go back and you see every one of these clients and you ask them this set of questions, right? Pretty simple. What's your burial plan? Do you have market investments? Real simple fact-finding questions, and offer them, just do a presentation And after 90 days, if you still have not made enough money to stick around, go find a different career. And now she's making 200 grand a year. And that's been 18 months ago, right? Because she just wasn't doing the whole process. So I think that's part of your conversation is, hey, lift the sheets and let's figure out what's really going on here.
I'll tell you one of the most successful projects I ever worked on was at my former company. Fact Finder, very similar to ours. Back then, though, we didn't have Macs, so everything was paper. So what I did, and this is something everybody on this phone call could probably do if you have even one agent, is based on the Fact Finders, is I had 2 administrators work full time and go through. We had 4 draws. I had like 35 4 draws worth of Fact Finders, right? Client files. They went through every one of them with a notepad and literally wrote down the name of the person, the name of who the agent was, and all of the financial assets that could potentially qualify for annuities. So CDs, money markets, existing annuities, IRAs, and all of it on there. And they wrote the assets down, where they were, and the dollar amount. And they turned these sheets in. And this is something everybody on here could do. If you grabbed all your agents' Fact Finders, went through them all, wrote down the name, the dollar amounts, everything else, and created literally, and we came up with, we found like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow.
We weren't going to get it all, but at the same token, if we got 10% of it, and then we sent back, the managers went back, and the FAs went back, all the top annuity producers went back on a split with them, right? Right now they're getting 100% of nothing. They go back and even got 50-50, right? They don't do anything except get this person back in the door. We did so much. We were number 2 agency in the entire company in annuities in the smallest state in America. So that's something you can do because there's so much money being left on the table, and that money could be the life changer for that person. And I always say this, and it's a very true fact. One of the biggest retention tools we have is annuity sales. Because a Medicare sale can buy somebody 72 hours in the business. But our average annuity sale can buy somebody 90 days.
Right.
So you want to get 90 more days to work with your agent, get out and close some annuities for them, keep them in the business long enough until they get their footing underneath them, and then they could be with you for life.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. The annuity I just wrote before this call started, there's a new agent on, just contracted 5-6 weeks ago, $5,000 is his split on it. He's not leaving.
You just bought him for 90 days. And nothing against a Medicare sale, that's wonderful, but you're not buying 90 days to still pour into this new agent and get them secure.
Yep, just bought him all of AEP so he can have a little bit of comfort going through AEP, get a big check in January, and he's not going anywhere. So alternatively, so we talked a little bit about agents that are meeting expectations, right? What about the ones that aren't? The ones that you co-create this plan, they're not feeling it, they're not listening. What do you do in that situation?
Same thing. We got to have we got to have a heart-to-heart conversation and just say, Colton, I want to sit down with you because, we talked about this plan. We have it right here in front of us, what you want to accomplish. But I have to believe maybe, some of the stuff you put to paper, you personally really aren't interested in attaining. Because right now, your results, and to be perfectly blunt, your activity does not match what you want to accomplish. It's kind of like the old theory. Why would you expect the same results as me with your work ethic? To be blunt, right? I think it's really important. And this isn't about you or me. This is to say to the agent, these two things don't match. Your activity and the results you're getting are absolutely what they should be. In other words, your results are right in line with the activity you're putting in, if that's what's going on. But this isn't what you said you wanted to accomplish. And if you think they are working, like I said, you've got a couple conversations. So one is we need to really pick up the activity. We've got company minimums, right? So we have a situation that says, hey, this person is or isn't capable of doing this. And like I said, if they are, we believe, capable and they just need some help, we got to pour into them. But if we find that they aren't capable or they aren't willing to put the effort in, then we have to give them that timeline, right? We've got to give them that 90 days. And you have to set a number, and that number is clear. And I've had those conversations at the end of that number when they did about a quarter of what they said they were going to do, even on the extended 90 days. And that's when I say to them, I'm so upset, Colton, that you have to leave. I never have to terminate somebody.
Yeah.
If they, again, continue to not do what they're supposed to do and said they were going to do, I simply say to them, call them in and just say, I'm really sad today that we have to part ways. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? Say, well, remember, we set this parameter. We had the extended parameter. You said you're going to do 9,000. You did 2,200. So, I hate to say it, but you decided, obviously, that this isn't something you want to continue to do. You decided.
Yeah. And in some cases, you're doing them a favor, right? Some people just won't.
Oh, you're always doing them a favor in that case.
Even if they're not cut out, when you and I both know, hey, they can go make $15 an hour and make more money than they're making here.
Yeah.
But I think that's also, not in every case, but also a reflection of recruiting is some of the time, a lot of the time when that happens is, well, what were the expectations put forth in the recruiting process? Is it that we're done at noon and we go golfing and we go to lunch and we go to happy hour? Or was it, hey, you're going to have to work your ass off. However, this is the result for people that do. So I think having that candid conversation from the beginning, do you have the ability to work 40 to 50 hours a week? If the answer is no, probably not a good fit to begin with. Because if they tell you they can work 30, they're really telling you they can work 20, right?
Yeah, we unfortunately at times, out of desperation, we put people, square pegs in circle holes to try to put people on. And I always like to say it this way: long-term success comes from selecting agents and promoting managers who align with your values and vision. Long-term success comes from selecting agents and promoting your managers who align with your values and vision.
Love that. So we talked about, the first part of goal setting with these new agents, right? Co-creating the plan really is centered around what do you have to make? What would you like to make? And that gets us through, their training period, maybe through those first 6 months as they start getting their feet under them. At what point does your goal setting conversation start to shift where you're talking to them a little bit more about maybe some of the personal goals they have, the financial goals, investment goals? When does that shift and what does that sound like?
Yeah, I think my personal belief is you should be meeting with your agents every week. And in fact, I think in most cases, and maybe this isn't for some RSMs who have a lot of managers underneath them, but for everybody probably on this call just about, I think that you should have a connect point every day. So whether that's a text, a phone call, or a face-to-face, you should be connecting at some point throughout each day of the week with your agents. And I think that, to some people may be a big surprise. To some, it's like, well, of course. And probably the ones saying, of course, are the ones who are performing very well. You have to know what's going on. You can't be in a position to effectively step in before something becomes a big problem if you don't know what's going on a daily basis with your team. And so one of the things I used to do with all my agents, they would what's called cash out every field day night. So I'm with them 2 days a week. My call days were Tuesday and Friday. So Tuesday and Friday, I'm with them all day anyway. Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, whether in the field, they cashed out every night. And I encourage this of everybody on this phone call today is that your team should cash out. So what's that mean? It means at the end of the day, every agent would just shoot a quick text, quick phone call, whatever, to their manager and give them basically four numbers, right? They'd let them know, kept 4, sold 2, made $1,500, got 4 referrals. Those are the 4 numbers they reported. Kept, sales, total commissions earned for the day, total referrals gathered. And that way, my managers would then send me one team total for everybody. But they knew who was doing what, who didn't do what, so they could drill down on it. And if an agent went 2 days in a row, blanking, we call it blanking, right? No business. They, on the next call day, they were having lunch with them. They were grabbing a coffee. They were booking a field day with them the next road day that they had so they could put money in their pocket, right? They were stepping in while it was still a molehill and not a mountain problem.
Right. So this is to that point of their goal setting. Here's what I've found over the course of time is you have some agents, we get them through those first year, 2 years, 3 years, and their goals are a lot different, right? And if you got someone making $100,000 a year, they're comfortable, their bills are paid, you got to give them a vision outside of just that $100,000. And there's something I learned from Kit. This is a pretty watered down version, but finding out what their personal goals are and then relating that back to the business. So for example, if I visit with you, Greg, you're making 100 grand a year, you're comfortable, your bills are paid. And I said, well, talk to me about some of your personal goals. And one of your personal goals is you want to send your kids to private college, for example. Say, great, how much is that going to cost? And you tell me probably 100,000 a kid. Great, you have 3 children. Do you have $300,000 sitting in the bank? No. Okay, well, how much more income do you need to make over the next 8 years, for example, to have the 100,000 per kid? Well, I'm making 100 now. I probably need to make, I don't know, probably 150. Okay, well, let's figure that out. If you make 150, that's extra 30 times 3, that's 90. Okay, that math makes sense. So what are we going to do to make sure you're making 150 instead of 100? We'll go ahead and grab your appointment book, right? And we figure out you made $100,000. You had 500 appointments for the year, right? It doesn't matter if they were home, not home, sold, not sold. You had 500 appointments. You made 100 grand. That means you make $200 for every appointment that you schedule, right? Super simple, break down the math. So in order for you to make 150,000, right? Well, now you need, instead of 500 appointments, you need 750, right? Which comes to about 15 to 16 a week versus the 10 that you're running now. Do you see the math there? Yeah, okay, great. Would it be okay with you if I held you accountable to 16 appointments a week to make sure your kids can go to private school, right? So tying their personal goals in with production, because there's so much oversight once they get to, 80, 100, even 200,000, 300,000 a year. Oh, I'm comfortable. My bills are paid. I'm working part-time. They gotta have a vision beyond just this month's bills.
100%. And I think, that's when we start having the building wealth conversations, right? The paying off debt conversations. And I think what you just did is simply what I call reduction to the ridiculous, right? You got to figure out your people's numbers. You got agents that make 6 cents every time they pick up the phone. You got agents that make $16 every time they pick up the phone. And it's really important if someone knows that, you can tie it right back into what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, I think it's great to start going outside of that, right? The home, the vehicle, the education. Are you building for retirement? Are you maxing out a SEP IRA? All the different things that they can do. All right, do you want to get that second home? These types of things, these are part of their long-term strategy. And it's good to have these conversations. You can't have these conversations later if you haven't created the relationship up front.
Right. And people will leave bad managers, but people don't leave mentors, right? And I think that's
people don't leave companies, they leave leaders.
Yeah, and I think at some point it's, some of these agents, they could go do whatever, right? And then we look at some of these other captive agencies, like, man, why is that person still working at that company? Right. And a lot of times it's because they have a good mentor and a good leader that cares about not just their business, but their personal life. And, for example, I'm not leaving Greg, right? I'll pay you 10 points more on life insurance. I don't care. I'm not leaving my mentor. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think that, when you look at it from a simple standpoint, when I can help you get to the revenue goals that you want to get to, and I create a relationship, so it's revenue and relationship, right? If I can help you with your revenue and I create a good relationship with you and show you that I actually care about you and will do everything I have to do. In other words, you like to say, I'll give you 100% of my 50%, right? If I'm doing those two things, revenue driving for you and helping you, right, align your goals, design your goals, and get to your goals, and I'm creating a real relationship. I get to know your spouse's name. I get to know your kid's name. I know what's important to you, whether it's making sure you're at a soccer game, right? I do special things. If I'm doing those two things, that's the best revenue piece or retention piece you can ever have as a leader.
Absolutely. And outside of earned income, I find one major thing that can cause people to leave agencies is marketing, right? They're bad on the phones or they don't like the phones. It's exhausting. They're struggling, whatever the case may be. They think there's an easier way to do it. I got AI now or whatever the case may be. So what are some thoughts you have around maybe some alternative marketing strategies that we can implement as leaders to kind of alleviate that stress of the phones, if you will?
Yeah. So good question. So I started in 1985 Some of the people on the phone probably weren't born. But the bottom line is, I can tell you there wasn't leads. It was Project 100, all you people you know, which I'm 21 years old coming into the business. I didn't know a lot of people, but I had all the family, friends, neighbors, all that. But then it was either pick up the phone and cold call out of a phone book at the time, or get really good at referrals. So I did. And in fact, just this week and a half, whatever ago at the RSM meeting, I gave a company presentation on a new referral process, the process I've used my whole career, just refined for ASB. So I really believe that between our affinity marketing, that's going on, and working on becoming a referral expert, and I talk about a referral mindset, and then creating a referral culture in your agency and in your teams, that is your ticket to the next level. And a couple of reasons. Number one, almost 90% of all people surveyed said that they would absolutely give their financial person referrals if asked, which simply means if you're not getting referrals, you're not asking, okay? Because 9 out of 10 people will give them to you. Number two, on average, referrals are going to increase people's business 50 to 500%. I know for me personally, I got really good at it as an agent. I was booking 9 out of 10 of my referrals in for appointments, and I was closing 9 out of 10 first call sales. So in other words, first calls. So I didn't go to appointments. I went to sales for the most part with working referral business, all referrals. And I was no better than anybody on this phone call. So you would be the same way with experience and practicing. But I will tell you this, I interviewed our top 10 producers in the country just recently. I texted with them, emailed with them, even I think talked to 1 or 2 of them. And I simply said, tell me how much percentage of your business last year came from referrals. These are the top 10 producers in the nation last year. And 2 of them worked exclusively on seminars and then the referrals from the seminars. The other 8, the average was 76%. So over 3 out of every 4 sales they made last year were referrals. In fact, they don't want leads. Leads to them is just depressing, right? They don't want those. They want qualified people to see, because that's what professionals do. So we have a whole process to go through on that. But I think it's important because, if you do the referral training and you really work on it, it's unbelievable. And it will literally change your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked to some groups not too long ago about referral. They said getting referrals is tough. And I said, well, I'll give you the simplest way you can get referrals. 2 ways, really. One, if your client has a final expense or an annuity, something with a beneficiary, go see the beneficiary. Call, introduce yourself. I'm your mom or dad's financial advisor or their insurance agent. Want to come by and introduce myself. Now you go see that younger couple. Doesn't interfere with your day-to-day activity on the Medicare side. Well, maybe this younger couple is like me and my wife, where we have 3 kids, and now you just sold 5 life insurance policies on a Tuesday night at 6 p.m., which requires some effort. You just made an extra $1,200 for the week. And then it was my dad that sent you to us. So then you're visiting with us and you say, okay, well, hey, Marissa, obviously I know Colton's dad. Where do your parents live? Oh, they live a mile up the road. Great.
Right.
They're probably the contingent beneficiaries. I want to come by and introduce myself and make sure they understand how to get a hold of me. Heaven forbid something happens to you. And now you're back in the Medicare market, and you can play that game all day long. And it doesn't cost you any extra time, really. It doesn't cost you any money. The appointments are going to be home. There's already a built-in relationship. So I think that's the best way you can run your business. I mean, I hate to say that I do prospecting training, but 90% of my business is all referrals. Right? I don't pick up the phone and call people that don't know I'm calling them.
Right. 100%. And I will tell you, you're absolutely right. Every beneficiary should absolutely be a referral, because you need to make sure they know who you are, because God forbid something happens, right? You're going to be the first person they should be calling or one of the first people. So, excuse me, I think that's important. And there's this process. If your RSM was at the recent meeting, ask them about it. Say, I heard there was a referral process that was presented. I'm doing a training for 2 or 3 offices upcoming just in the next couple of weeks as a follow-up to that training. And it's really important, because once you get this simple system down, it literally it'll transform your business. It really will. You start to get into a referral mindset. You don't think about making sales. you think about, am I going to replace the appointment I'm on with another qualified referral? Until the point where your entire schedule is simply all referrals and clients. That's it.
Yeah,
And you'll be making every convention if you do that.
for sure. So I mentioned outside of earned income, there's two big factors that can influence good people to leave, right? One being marketing, which we just addressed. The second I've seen, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, is when agents lose a big case, right? I go write a big annuity for you, Greg, and 2 weeks down the road, 3 weeks down the road, you're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, the lady canceled. And here you are devastated. You thought you had 10 grand coming your way and now you don't. So, talk to me, I guess, about how we
Sure.
prevent that from happening if we can, and what the process looks like.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one, in the annuity space, which that was a big part of the business in my region. And I will tell you, the bottom line is you have to be very careful. First of all, you need to go for low-hanging fruit when it comes to annuity sales. You don't immediately go after the financial advisor who's their brother-in-law that they've had for 15 years and the money he's managing or she's managing. You just don't do that. That's not the first place you start, right? You go for the low-hanging fruit, because then you're just setting yourself up for a problem. Even if you beat them into submission so they finally do business with you and move some of that money, they're going to get a phone call from a relative the first day they get the transfer paperwork, and you're going to lose the sale. But bigger than that, okay, is teach agents to never spend submitted. You don't spend submitted. You can write that down, okay? Business isn't real until it's issued and delivered. The best way to handle this is twofold. One, have enough activity so that agents aren't submitting or are submitting 8 to 15 cases a month, right? I think Todd Riley was submitting 40 or 50 a month. And they're not relying on 1 or 2 big cases. Law of numbers, that's number one, right? That'll take care of a bunch of the problem right there. And then number 2 is take ownership of your pending business. Spend 15 minutes every morning before you hit the first appointment to follow up on any and all outstanding requirements so you get things issued. People don't do that. It's crazy almost. They just want to get business in and put it into hope and wish and land and think it's just going to go through. It's not. Yeah, it's not soup until you put all the ingredients in. And one of the ingredients is you have to make sure that those requirements are all met and you're following it through to fruition. So those are 2 things I would focus on.
Yeah, and the submitted, I always say time kills all deals, right? So if a client goes 3 or 4 weeks, they don't hear a word from you, and you're trying to move 100 grand, eventually they're like, man, Colton, they haven't called me in 4 weeks. What's going on? Like, did they take my money?
Right.
Versus 2 or 3 times a week. I would rather a client say, Colton, I trust you. You don't have to call me 3 times a week. It's good. I'd rather that conversation happen than the other one, right? Where I never hear from you, and just give them up to date. Hey, this is where we're at. I contacted the company. They said it's going to be another 7 business days. If there's anything I need, I'll let you know. So I think, working that pending. And if you have agents underneath of you and you're the one writing the business, also communicating with that agent. Hey, this is where we're at in the pending process. This is when we can expect this to issue. This is what we still need. And maybe involve them a little bit. If all you need is an initial from a client, Greg, I have an important job for you today, as Clay would say, right? Yep. I need you to get an initial from this client on this form. Once you do this, we're getting paid, dude. And you're gonna be like, yep, I'm the reason we got paid today, right? So no, I think that's good. I want to go into.
I was just going to say that communication is one of the biggest. It's one of the killers, right, of a lot of situations with agents and with clients, and in terms of lack of communication. And good communication is one of the kings of the business, right? When you have good communication with your agents, better things happen. Good communication with your clients, better things happen.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about agent recognition. I am a recognition-driven agent, right? And I've always believed it doesn't matter what you win, it matters that you win. Right? There can be a hot dog contest. I don't care. I do not want to lose, right? I don't care what it is that's on the line. And I think a lot of top performers are the same way. They want to be recognized. They love the plaques. They like the speeches, but for some of our leaders, maybe they don't have a team of 2 or 3 people. Maybe they're not earning 500 grand a year and they can't spend 10 grand on some big luxurious, item, if you will. So what incentive ideas would you encourage some of our maybe leaders with smaller teams to implement?
Good, yeah, good. Again, another good question, Colton. I was blessed to have a lot of Colton Skirvins in my office when we were thriving, and I will tell you, they loved recognition. You're absolutely right. So I'm a big proponent of recognition and rewards. First of all, real simple formula for everyone that's on this call: always spend 10% of your management comp back on your team. Tithe your team, because you're going to pay taxes like 30% anyway, right? No matter what state you're in. So you might as well get to write off what you're spending on your team as a business deduction, right? And actually invest it back into your team to grow your team. I think that's really important. So tithe your team. That's number one. Number two, make $1,000, and that's the old make 1,000, spend 100. If your override was $1,000, take $100. What can you do with that? Well, let's see. I can do lunch on call day, right, for my team, depending on the size. I can do 5 $20 gas cards. You want to drop a $20 gas card on 5 of your agents on a call day? Say, listen, really appreciate all the work you're putting in. I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you do for our team. And I want you to know that by me giving you this, I know it's a small token, but this $20 gas card, throw it in your car. My gas is on me for the next 1 or 2 road days. That type of thing goes so far. Other things, appetizers and cocktails after a long day. We used to do something called Stars After Hours every single month. And everything I always ran as promotions, it was all based on what's called K Club. K meaning 1,000. Because you got agents making, and that's not premium, it's dollars in pocket. Agents who make $1,000 in their pocket a week on average are not leaving you. Okay? So you got to get them into that K Club. So every Friday, we had a K Club. We could have a Friday K Club lunch, right? So anybody that made over $1,000, right, in the week, boom, I'm buying lunch on Friday. We sit together. We have a powwow. We talk about the week. We learn from each other. Great stuff. Every month, I had something called Stars After Hours. And that means anybody that had at least $4,000 earned for the month, right? So $1,000 a week average, they were invited to Stars After Hours. And I went to a local restaurant that was within, like, you could throw a stone at it from my office. And I told them, here's the deal. Every first Tuesday, this was the first call day of the month, I'm going to bring a group of people over into your bar area, and we're going to give them each 2 drink coupons. So let's say 10 people qualify. That's going to be 20 drinks on a Tuesday night when you have nobody in here at 5 o'clock to 6:30. I need you to throw in some free appetizers. So some wings, right? Some little pizzas, whatever. And I mean, they jumped at that. Whether it's 1 to start that goes, and then it grows to 25, depending on the size of your team, going to Stars After Hours was awesome, because that Tuesday morning in the kickoff meeting, I announced the names of who qualified for Stars After Hours. And literally, they made sure that if anybody who didn't qualify tried to sneak over, they would like boot them out of there, because they were like, right, it became very important to make Stars After Hours. So little things like that will fuel production big time. And they don't cost you a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. Super cheap. Oh, I love that. And outside of incentives, we do have some people too we have a lot of different personalities that are, they're trying to climb the ladder, so to speak, right? They're very promotion driven. They're very title driven, which is fine. So what processes would you recommend we have in place for promotions, right? From one level to the next? And not even necessarily numbers, but how do we celebrate those promotions so people feel good about moving up in our business?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things are important. Whenever you're celebrating something, whether it's a promotion, whether it's someone getting a designation, right? Any of these types of things, someone qualifying for convention, I think that, take them out in their spouse. If there is a spouse or significant other, take them out to a nice dinner at a nice steakhouse or their favorite restaurant. Ask them, where would you like to go? I want to take you out to dinner. Very, very important that you do make a big deal out of it. You make a big deal out of it in the office. I always say this, and this is something I encourage people to write down. Whenever you want to get more of anything, there's 3 steps. Number 1, train on it. Number 2, recognize it. And number 3, reward it. Okay? So if I want to get more anything, if I want to get more people getting their designation in a certain thing in my office, I'm going to train about that, even have the classes in the office after hours, or on Saturday mornings, we're going to have classes that we're going to run in here. If people want to get trained and be able to get a designation. Number 2, I'm going to recognize it. So when you get it, not only are we going to tell everybody in the office and put up a plaque about it and then take you out to a nice dinner about it, I'm gonna recognize it and reward it, right? Those are the three things. So I'll give you a quick example. How we became number 2 in annuities in the country in the smallest state was simple. I trained every Wednesday morning before everyone hit the field from 8 to 8:45 for 2 years. Everybody would come in, and I trained them on money, so that my agents, whether they were licensed as securities or not, they knew every single financial vehicle out there, because I knew they were going to run into it on fact finders, and I wanted them to be smart enough and feel confident enough to be able to at least pick up the information to bring it back. If they couldn't close it themselves, they could at least bring it back, because it sounded very, very up on things. That's number one. Number two, all we talked, in the meetings, that's the first thing we did every Tuesday and Friday morning. All right, who has statements to prep? And your name went on the board. Oh, Colton Skirvin, what do you got, Colton? Oh, you got an IRA for $100,000 from so-and-so bank? Great. And I put them on. So you wanted to have statements to prep. You wanted to have me putting your name on that board every call day morning. And then we would make sure those were all prepped throughout the call day and the go-backs were set. And then I rewarded it. Every call day also, right after I got all the new statements, I said, okay, who had what I called, it was called statement prep, go back kept. That was the promotion. Statement prepped, go back kept. So if you had a statement, right, we prepped it, and one of the closers went back with you, or an FA or whoever, and you did business or not, you still got a $20 or $25 gas card right in front of everybody in the meeting. That's the reward. So we trained it, we recognized it, and we rewarded it. And then we also had, today we have a group me text. Every single time someone sold an annuity in the office, boom, they shot it in, and the text went out to the entire agency, right from 8 in the morning till close of business. So you either were excited because it's your name and lights, or you were that much more upset that you're not on there yet, right? And it built such competition, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I think the group me is a great benefit. In fact, right before we hopped on this call, I couldn't wait to text that annuity into the group so everyone can see on a Friday afternoon right before this call I'm dropping 340, and
that's why HRG does so well.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. So,
yep.
So we talked a lot about what to do inside of work. So I'd like to shift gears for a minute and talk a little bit more about, work-life balance, and not just the balance, but also how we can include either the spouses or the children to make them feel like they're, part of our culture inside of our agencies. Because I feel like that's also part of what keeps a lot of good people is their families feel like they're part of the team and they're part of our family. So what are some things, you would recommend that you think contributes to that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I used to do is every time we would bring on a new agent, all right, you have to tie in spouses and significant others. You have to. And you have to show that this is a business that is all about working our tails off, but having balance, and we're doing it for a reason. There's a why, there's a purpose, right? Bigger than just going out and doing business. So when bringing on new agents, I used to have spousal meetings immediately, right? So right off the bat, within the first week, when we contracted someone, I or the assigned supervisor would go over, they would paint the vision, meet the family, as well as go over the effort required to attain the vision for the spouse. So they knew it, they knew going in. We would also answer all questions they had. That was the most important part. Let them get it all out, because we don't know what the agents told them all about this career. So it's almost like we want to give another career briefing to the family, so they really get it. And we set the expectation, because they're not coming home to us after a bad day in the field. They're going home to that spouse or significant other. So we need them to be a cheerleader, right? Not someone who says, "Why don't you get a real job?" every time they come home. That's not going to be a good thing. Number two, I've sent convention flyers home to spouses with a personal note on them saying, "I hope you'll be celebrating with us next year." All right. You have to be willing to get everyone tied into that. And if the agent comes in and says they were upset that you did that, just say, obviously I know what your goal is then, so you're certainly not going to be there, right? Right? I mean, it's important that the spouse knows that there's a big opportunity here. You're going to Hawaii? You kidding me? Here's our convention next year. I'm hoping you and Agent Colton are going to be there. Marissa, I hope Colton and you will be joining us in Hawaii next year, right? They should be excited about that. And then they should be looking at it every day when they go home. And then as many agency promotions as you can, invite the spouses or significant others too, right? The dinners, the cookouts, the games, right? that you go to, all that type of stuff, the weekend getaways, you know, that type of stuff is huge. Culture, culture, culture. If you're not building it, you're breaking it.
No. Yeah, and I love that, you know, getting the spouses involved. I had an old manager who told my wife at a cookout, he goes, you need to be asking Colton every day when he gets home from the field how many apps he had. And if he tells you less than 3, you need to ask him what the hell he did all day long. So it was like this thing. Finally, after like a few months, I'm like, honey, I'm making enough money. It's fine, right? But she would say, so how many sales did you have today? Oh, I had 2. Well, did someone else have more than 2? Like, oh yeah, a couple other people, you know. Well, why didn't you have as many as them? Right. So it's also an accountability piece, and she felt like she was involved and like, hey, I'm helping push him to reach these goals. So I think that's just incredible. And you know, lastly, I want to talk about, and we already kind of talked about it, but I feel like it needs to be reiterated. Over the course of my career, which hasn't been long, it's been, you know, just short of 10 years, but we've lost some people along the way. And in some cases, I saw it coming, right? I'm, you know, hey, I need to meet you tomorrow morning at 7, and they never got it at 9. And I'm like, okay, they're going to quit. No big deal. And in other cases, they were decent agents, and it blindsided me. I'm like, wow, I can't believe they quit. But I contribute that to more of a lack of communication where I thought, hey, everything's good. We're on cruise control. I can focus my attention elsewhere. And I wasn't communicating with them as often as I needed to be. So with that being said, I know you already said it once, but I feel like it needs to be reiterated. How often should we be communicating, not with just new agents, but all agents across the board, no matter what length of tenure they're at?
Yeah. So I want to just say that I did this recently at I won't mention the region, but I was speaking to a region not long ago, and they had about, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 managers were there. They all are involved in leadership within this region. And one of the things that one of the people was actually a top producer who had now gotten into management and was in the room. And I asked this person, you know, do they like being held accountable? I think was exactly what we talked about. And do they like having that type of constant, you know, communication with, and they loved it. See, a lot of people think that the more business you do and the higher producer you are, you just want to be left alone. That's the last thing you want, okay? No matter how good they want to be tied in. They want to hear what's going on in the office. They want to know all about, you know, what's happening, where they stand. You know, they certainly want to feel good. They want you to recognize them and especially in front of their peers. But at the end of the day, if you think, oh, they're self-sufficient, they don't need me anymore, like, you know, that's not good. I'll just say this, you know, I used to say the same thing when people say, well, they've been here for a long time, they're killing it, they're doing a lot of business, they don't need to come to meetings anymore. To me, if you're so good that you know everything that we're going to talk about, you should be giving the meeting, you know. And also the onus is on us as the managers. You know, Kit said something at a RSM meeting not long ago. And he basically said, if your people aren't showing up to your meetings, that's on you. You're not bringing enough value. And I love that because that's exactly how I feel. If you're not bringing enough value, then why would they show up? So let me just say one thing, and this is really important. I've been trying to teach for a few years now, something I coined the fireman's approach to leadership. So if you want to write that down, it's fireman's approach. And what that means is simple. Just think about a fireman or firewoman, right? What do they do in the fire? When there's a fire, do they run away from it or do they run into it? And that's the difference. Most managers shy away from the uncomfortable conversations. But the best leaders, they run into them. And they don't wait. They don't, because problems don't get better with time. They're not wine, okay? They just grow. So I love, in fact, every day I look for how many uncomfortable conversations I can have and problems I can resolve so that I can get to the other side of that. Because I know on the other side is what I said earlier, which is it's going to be progress and growth for both of us, right? Good stuff comes out of it. So I encourage everyone on this call to adopt the fireman's approach to how you lead. When you know, I don't have to tell you, you know the conversations that right now you know you should be having with certain people, but if they're really uncomfortable, so you're just kind of hoping they'll go away and take care of themselves. They don't take care of themselves. So no one likes it, but regular communication feedback is what your teams want, underline, and need. And I met with my agents every day as a leader. I like to say at least a daily touch point in communication. So text, call, face-to-face is crucial. Weekly team meetings, at least twice a week. You know, we would have them FaceTime on the call days. And then, field day cash outs, like I said earlier, I think is crucial because that's another touch point that kind of sets the stage. You're already going to see them on call days, but it's on those field days. And you can have touch points through those field days, and a cash out is a way to do that. Even if it's a quick 30-second phone call to tell you how the day went, then you know whether or not you need to pump them up real quick before they go home and meet them the next morning for coffee or breakfast because they had a really rough time, or you just need to encourage them and congratulate them for such an awesome day.
No, absolutely. Well, Greg, I really appreciate you joining us today. This was a lot of good information. A few big things that I took away from it that I hope everyone else did. One is don't wait to co-create a plan with these people, with these agents. Make sure from the very first day you understand what it is they're wanting to accomplish, and make sure there's a plan in place for them to reach those goals. 2, make sure you're tithing your team. Don't be a greedy leader. If you make $1,000 in overrides, pretty easy to spend $100 on your team. And there's a lot of things you can do with $100. You could go to the local grocery store and get $100 worth of meat, bring your grill to the office and have a grill out with some yard games, right? To build your culture. So make sure you're tithing your team. Have the fireman's approach when it comes to leadership. Don't shy away from tough things, tough conversations, uncomfortable situations. Make sure you're diving into these, right? Solve these problems when they're a molehill, not a mountain, right? Mountains cause people to leave. They're tough to overcome. And lastly, if you want change in your regions, you need to do 3 things. You need to train on it, you need to recognize it, and you need to reward it. So those are the biggest things that I took away. Again, Greg, I really appreciate you making time today on this Friday. I know it's pushing 5 o'clock.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love sharing this.
Absolutely. Well, if nothing else, I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you, Cole. Great job.
Thanks, Greg. See you guys.
Nice job, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.